of family caregivers who assist a spouse, parent, or other loved one so they can live independently at home where they want to be. 56% of North Carolinians are age 45 and older are or were family caregivers according to AARP survey. So some people raised their hand and said they were a caregiver. How many people have been a caregiver in the past? So, okay, thank you. Most family caregivers help a loved one age 75 or older for an average of 8 years. 8 years, that's a long time. Family caregivers provide at least 80% of all care services needed to help their loved ones remain at home out of costly institutions, including bathing, dressing, meal preparation, transportation, and even medical and nursing tasks. This unpaid, unpaid care performed by family caregivers is valued at estimated $11.7 billion annually. What happens when you're a caregiver? What's the number one thing that happens when you're a caregiver?
Burnout.
Burnout?
Stressed out.
Stressed out?
Illness is yourself.
Illness is yourself. And what we're finding is huge isolation. So if you, how many people are ministers in here? Any ministers in here? We have one here. Do you know how many caregivers there are in your church?
Every family.
Quite a few,
Yeah,
did you say?
every family.
Almost every family. He said almost every family. Most ministers, reality, do not know how many caregivers are in the church. You know why? Because they don't talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. So what happens if Mary, who's been coming to church every Sunday, all of a sudden disappears? And April sees her in the grocery store and says, Mary, I haven't seen you in church for weeks. What's going on? She says, I've been home taking care of my mother. April goes back to church and tells the trustees and the deacons, we need to pray for Sister Mary. Well, we need to do more than pray for Sister Mary. We need to figure out how do we get Sister Mary back into the church. Because Mary has come away from her socialization. She has moved into isolation. She's taking care of a loved one and she's probably stressed out. Most caregivers are still working. They're juggling their jobs, their families. People have lost their marital spouses caregiving because it is a tremendous amount of work. People have gone bankrupt caregiving because it is very expensive. All of these pieces come together, and what do you have? A person that's in trouble and needs assistance. So AARP has created a program that can go into churches, and it's called Connecting Caregivers to Community. And what we do is we work within the churches to create a care buddy system. So now we find out Mary's in trouble, and we need to bring her back to church. So we set up a system within the church to look for individuals who will serve as a buddy for Sister Mary. She will provide the buddy system for the caregiver. What we're concerned about is the caregiver. Our caregivers are dying before the people that they're taking care of.
And we're going to come back, but he said, well, Odell, why did you start it off with caregivers? Let me tell you why. I happen to be part of the leadership of a very large church. African American church, black church, whatever you want to call it. What we find at Mount Zion and other places around the country when I go there is that there's no kind of hurt like church hurt. Now, we call it church hurt, but other people call it behavior health, meaning that I've grown up in this church, I paid my tithes, I paid my offerings, I've done this, I've done that. My kids want to know, why do you always go to that church? Talking about the black church. Now all of a sudden, I need the church to come and do something folks won't. Then all of a sudden, I go into this whole mental, emotional thing on, I gave to them, but now they won't help me, so now I'm mad at them and I'm mad at God. And that whole wrestling with them and wrestling with God and that whole mental aspect of it, so we're trying to do caregiving, help us before we even get there. That makes sense? And we're gonna tie it off, but I'm just trying to explain why we did it this way. You're like, what does that have to do with it? How many people who get church hurt, it's nothing like church hurt. Because hurt people. And we have to understand it going, and a lot of pastors, we can't handle that.
So I am here to talk to you about the mental health issues and how this kind of intersects or integrates with the Black church and faith. So one of the things I wanted to, I think it's important to pay attention to how important the Black church has been to our community, and then I'm going to segue into the mental health pieces. Because I think this piece is just very, very important. So if you look at this number 2 slide here at the bottom of the first page, what the Black church has meant to its congregants and to the community. It has been a pillar of the Black community. It provided support when there was not any other. So if you look at these, this is great that you couldn't get these pillars here. Because imagine if one of these were moved, right? We'd have a not so great situation. These pillars here are supporting the very structure that we are sitting safely under. So that's what the Black church has been. It was/is often sought for guidance in all areas of life. Sickness, poverty, it's how we socialize, it's how sometimes we're educated. It's all encompassing and has been all encompassing for a long time. It's strongly influential in personal, community, and even political matters. Yes, I know there's a separation of church and state, but it's influential in even political matters. And faith in God was what the church offered. It was all the people had. It was all the people had. So when that's all you've had, then that's what you always go to. And that's been passed down from generation to generation to generation. So now if you look at this next slide on page 2, how does this integrate with mental health practitioners? This first bullet, it's viewed as untrustworthy. Mental health practitioners are viewed as untrustworthy, especially because of that first sub-bullet. You all have heard of the Tuskegee studies? Tuskegee was the one that was popular. But there were lots of studies like the Tuskegee studies where Black people were mistreated by the healthcare industry. Were mistreated, diseased, and left to die. We want to see what's going to happen to you when we inject this disease into you. So you can imagine that we're not very comfortable sometimes with any level of healthcare professional. Then you look at mental health, which is often we're pushed to the side, and people look at you with one eye open when I say what I do. It's like, you sit and talk to people, really? You get paid for that? What? Yes, we do, but there's a stigma. There's a stigma with everybody, Black, white, green, blue, yellow. There's a stigma with everybody, but especially the people who were treated unfairly in the Tuskegee studies and studies like those. So this is another part of the backdrop. It's sometimes viewed as a competing source that does not acknowledge the omnipotence of God. Oh, you're so professional, you got all those letters behind your name, but do you know Jesus? Isn't that what we hear? Amen. So it's viewed as, yeah, you got all that, but you don't really know. And then that last bullet, the relevance of addressing a mental health issue is misunderstood because a lot of times you can't see it. You can't see the depression in these caregivers.
What I've seen is inappropriate teaching if the foundation of church is the Bible. A lot of inappropriate teaching has gone forth in the church community. And that causes people to come from a perspective of judgment versus love. And also teach about a God who judges first versus loves first. And what happens with that is it causes people to get kicked outside of the box of church. So this place that has for generations has been a place where you can go to for safety, now all of a sudden in 2015, certain people aren't welcome there. And that can be people who have issues with substances. That can be people with different sexual orientation. That can be people from different socioeconomic statuses. What it used to be, I'm gonna tell you a quote from my grandfather, and please listen to the context of this. This is someone who was born in the late 1920s. He used to say, a Negro may not be able to be something in their community or even in their home, so they'll go to church to reach status within that arena. So a lot of times within the church setting, people are reaching for a certain status. And then when you come in, you have to be dressed like this. Now, I put this on because this is what I like to wear. But if someone comes in with jeans and a t-shirt, they should be accepted the same way. You have to meet people where they are and develop a relationship with them if you want to be able to be effective. Even when we're talking about God, judgment versus love. The main thing that Jesus, who was the example based on the Bible for us, the main thing that he did was build relationship with people versus coming in and saying, you need to stop doing this, you need to change that, you need to change your clothes. It wasn't like that. It was, how can we get close to one another? And then after we've built that relationship, I'll be able to see who you are, what you need, and address it if you are willing for me to address it. But it doesn't always work that way in today's day and age, and especially in the black church. One of the things that's been said over and over is how the black church and pastors have become jacks of all trades. Now, this is a problem that goes both ways. It's an inappropriate expectation for the church as an entity or the pastor to be someone that can help you with everything. I've been in mental health groups. I was in a bipolar group, bipolar and depression group specifically. I was a facilitator. And a young lady came in, it was her second time in the group, my first time in the group. And she said, do you know anything about bipolar? Do you have the depression or anything like that? And another person in the group spoke up and said, it's not his job to have experienced everything that you have experienced. It's just his job to cultivate an atmosphere in which you can grow and get past what you're dealing with.
What's your name? Brianna. Brianna, why do you think that we're going to have cereal if you come by my house?
Because if we put a whole lot of thought and energy into a meal, they're going to take it to a whole nother level.
You know, you're being very professional. It's not that I don't want to cook. I don't know how to cook. She's right there, she'll tell you. I'll burn water. We're laughing. You notice I'm not laughing, I'm being serious. My point is, I have an abnormality. I will never be a chef. There are certain things that we're limited by. And there are three things you need to remember. We're intimidated, which is self-defeating behavior. And intimidation can be a limiting thing to us. And then if we don't recognize that, it takes rule over our lives. And it will control you. Once we become regular people and be able to work with each other and realize that all of us are abnormal, it's just that somebody else might be what? A little bit more. And once we get that as a starting point, why are you smiling?
Because I teach in a class, I'm a life coach, and I am perfectly imperfect. And I love what you're saying. It's just like, wow. Yeah.
I only want to say amen to what you said this far. I'll be doing a piece this afternoon on who tends to the clergy. The deal for me is oftentimes clergy folk, especially African-American clergy folk, if someone's overwhelmed by the enormity of things they have to deal with. And the idea for us to help clergy folk do a better job of caring for the flock. See the clergy person, him or her, as the shepherd. But shepherds get tired. Where do they get a sense of balm? Where do they get a sense of still water? Where do they get a sense that they have to carry it all by themselves? But they're in a role of capacity, and what they also have to deal with is having this higher calling. And the issue is, how do we help pastors, mental health folks, medical folks, other folks, to help? And for someone to get a referral from your pastor is a good thing. we have grown in a society which has been racist. There's no question about that. And as someone said earlier, the church has been the salvation. But you know, like parents and families right now, they're being overwhelmed by a number of things going on. Pastors need help. You know, and the issue, people don't ask oftentimes, Pastor, are you okay? What they tend to do is come with the pastor, or they may feed him or her. And that's another issue we'll deal with another time. But the issue is providing support, love, care, and guidance for clergy folk. And in the African church, the deal is, because oftentimes in the African church, the pastor is held in such high esteem. Oftentimes, parishioners are afraid to approach the pastor with a concern, oftentimes. They say, Pastor, I'm a little worried about you. You know, you've been dealing this, that, and the other. So I think the thing I want to empower you to do with your clergy folks is talk to him or her about how are they doing? What might they need from you and from the congregation? So to give them your support as opposed to oftentimes being the case where they're supporting you.